Hey guys, thank you for tuning in to Slappys Garage. I have a lot getting done on the Dirtster in this episode, so I'm going to get right to it.
To get started, steering dampener was hitting the gas tank, and that's not including the bracket that holds it to the frame. Along with that, I'm about to make a custom bracket on the frame that holds the bracket for the steering dampener. So I'm starting off with the hammer and just tapping it fairly lightly and getting a shape for it, putting it on the bike every once in a while to see how far it is, and just going down farther and farther so I have room for the bracket in the end. This is the first time I've ever purposely dented a gas tank and was not upset when I ended up with a dented gas tank because usually I wreck or something. So now I'm also regretting this step. I wouldn't take off the paint like I did here. It's a learning process for me because it was actually a buffer between the hammer and the metal, and once you got rid of that, you actually made little dimples in the metal where you hit a little too hard. Now, it's not really a worry of mine because I'm going to be doing body work before I do paint, so I'll get rid of those dimples with a little bit of Bondo. And if I'm doing anything wrong, go down in the comments and tell me what I'm doing wrong and teach me so I can learn for the next time. Now, I think this came out perfect. It's nothing I need to change about it. I'm just going to clean it up when I do body work and paint it. So now I'm actually going to take it and strip it down, go to bare metal because this paint was super thick and I was trying to find any Bondo. I did find one little spot. I'll get into that a little later. Now, everyone has their own opinion when they're doing body work and painting. I'm stripping it down because I want to make sure when I put the stuff in the tank to strip it that it's not going to leak out, and I'll get into that in my next video. But for now, I found a little Bondo. I'm cleaning it out. I'm going to go down all the way. But for now, I'm continue stripping it and see if I can find any more, which I didn't, luckily. To give you a little closer to the Bondo, this is the only Bondo I found in the whole gas tank throughout the stripping process. But I'll give you a look on the inside. This is all the stuff that fell out just from sanding, not even from beating with the hammer. But it's really rough inside. So hopefully I can get this thing looking as good as new. And it doesn't leak any gas out of the seams. Now, through the video, you're going to see this tank only half stripped. It's because I only was using 120 and 150. My point behind that was I thought the 80 was going to eat through the tank, especially where the seam was, where I beat it down with the hammer. I didn't want to make it any weaker than it already was. Now that it's totally stripped, I can give you a little comparison. This is another Sportster gas tank that was slightly modified, but it's a very similar shape, and you can get the point of how the dimple that I made looks. And I'm giving you the close-up with the bracket, and it's actually going to show you for the next step is what I need to make to attach that to the frame. So I take a piece of bar stock, it's 1x1, and I'm going to just mark it out, get some heights, and then round it out and cut this out. So my process is taking a bandsaw and notching it down to there. You can look down in the left-hand corner, I'm drawing it out, and just make relief cuts. And then after this, I'm going to take the bandsaw, go horizontal, and go the opposite way and cut these relief cuts out. Now, these relief cuts are on an angle. That's because this piece does not sit square on the frame. So I'm cutting on the angle so it's going to sit square to the trees, not square to the frame. Now, cutting it with the bandsaw like this, you're not going to get a perfect cut. You're not going to have it exactly where you want it. So after this, I'm going to take the grinder and smooth out and try to get the radius while going onto the frame back and forth and just checking it this way. Once I get the bracket set up close, I'm going to cut off the excess that's wider than the bracket I'm installing. So to use the bandsaw, I just mark the line and cut it by hand like this. Now, it doesn't have to be too crazy because I'm going to grind a lot of the excess out after this. This is taking a big chunk and a lot less grinding and filing. Now all this excess is cut off. Now I'm going to just put it on the frame and check it. See how it sits with the bracket off the TR650. Now my next step, I also missed it because I ran out of storage on my phone. So I'll just explain it. I did 2 1/4-inch holes that I marked by marking the center of the piece and the width of the piece. And once I had those marks, I was able to bolt the bracket up to it. And then on the next step, I'm going to mark out my whole outline with the razor. And there's a little black mark from a Sharpie, but it was too far off and I wanted something more accurate so I can grind as close as I can. And I had the least excess material on the bike. Also like to mention that this radius tool on the grinder really made this a breeze, getting it real tight to the frame. So I welded. I'm not welding huge gaps. It's nice and tight. Now after this, I'm going to take the grinder and go as close as I can to the scratch line. And after that, I'm going to take the file and shave everything down, try to make it as even as possible, because the grinder is going to have a couple little waves to it, especially around the radius. So now this video is very short and sweet. It took me about 35 minutes to get this piece to the shape I wanted using the grinder and file. Once it's sanded, I just fine tune it with the file, getting rid of all the high spots or sharpening the corners, whatever it may be. It's the best way just to find where you need to grind more or you went too far. Now this finished product may look a little wonky, but I took the DA just to clean it up to see how it looks, especially because the DA is going to be very good for paint prep. It's going to adhere very good and look very smooth. So here it is. This is the finished product before I mount it to the frame. And for this video, I'm just going to tack weld it to the frame. Just disclosure, I've only got this welder a week ago. I'm still learning, so tack welding is all I want to do before I get a little more skilled with it. I also take off one of these paint-eating pads and just clean up the frame before welding. And if you weld, you know, if you want a nice clean surface to weld to, and you want the skill to do it, which I don't really have yet. With the front end on, I couldn't really get a tack on the front side, so I just put 2 tacks on the back side. And for the video purposes, it looks like they're right after each other, but I waited a little bit so the heat doesn't pull it too much, and I left the bracket on so it stays nice and put into the spot it needs to be. So now that the bracket's on, I'm going to put the gas tank back on. I don't bolt it, so if it looks a little cocked to the left or right, that's because the gas tank is not centered right now. But I'm just giving you an idea of how much room I have and how close I am to the tank.
Thank you guys for watching. I've been ecstatic with this build. I've been trying to do it the best I can. It's hard to do with my full-time job and putting my money on the side to do this little side project. But I'm making these videos for you guys. If you guys like, comment, subscribe, it really motivates me to get more done and do this to another level that I didn't think was possible. And with your support, I think I'm going to get there and make this one bad little Dirtster.